Right, hello and welcome back to another video. So this week we've got something a little bit different. So I have spent the last few weeks working on a materials course. So this is in Unreal 5. This is going to be the first part of two courses, and this is also broken down into two courses. Now I'm going to go over all the content, but unfortunately I ran out of time on this at the moment. So although I've put together all of the example files and sort of learning materials, I haven't had time to record the videos. So what I'm going to do is sort of an early access. So if you follow the Gumroad link below, you'll be able to go and get hold of all of this project you're about to see now. Download it. It's all set up to be a learning material without the video, so it's all commented and sort of step-by-step guides. And then at some point, hopefully not too long, I'm going to record all the videos, go down every single material one at a time, explain all the sort of theory and background and how to use all this stuff. So if you are interested and you do want to get hold of this now, yeah, you could get like an early access. I can't promise when that will be, but I can guarantee that everyone who does buy the link now will get full access to all the videos when they come. And then eventually, yeah, part two, and that will get added as well. So, yeah, this is part one. So broken down into two sections. Section one is this bit here, material editor reference, talking about all of the sort of concepts of the material editor. So we go over the different shading models, blend modes, all those kinds of things. And the idea is it's more sort of as a reference library as well as a sort of tutorial. So rather than going through step by step, you might come across a node you've not used before. You can look it up in here and see what the node does and have a sort of example of it being in use. Part two is focused on environments. Here we're talking about master materials and decals, using world space to do advanced materials. So we look at world up shaders, that kind of stuff. Vertex painting, two examples for landscapes, and then finally the new layered material system. So we're going to go through all of these levels and have a look at some of these materials now, and then eventually, once these videos have recorded and then part two is done, that's going to be looking at more advanced things. So VFX materials, animated materials, things like water and lava, those kinds of really complex shaders, foliage shaders, post-process, all of that kind of stuff. So not sure on the ETA on that. It depends obviously amongst freelance work and everything else, but that is the plan. So as I say, if you do want to get hold of this now and support this project, there's a link down below in the comments to where you can get this on Gumroad, and I guarantee that if you do buy it there, you will get access to all the video content and all the lessons when they do come. So but hopefully this is a good sort of self-learning environment. You can just read the comments and look at things, and also just use it as a basis. So there's quite a few functions in here that I've made for kind of for ease of use, so we'll have a look at a few of those as well. So cool. Okay, right, well let's have a look. This is the first level here, just the basics, and each of the materials is kind of its own tutorial. So this is something to load. So lots of comments, notes about how the palette works, how the UI is set up, really starting from the basics. So if you've got no experience with the material editor at all, this will give you those sort of initial starting steps, but also building up to really complex maths and the sort of more advanced things that the editor can do. So I'm not going to go through every material. There's about 130 in here, so don't have time for that, but just a few of the sort of the basic ones, and then some examples of each kind of level. So yeah, going over the introduction to the UI, all the different node types, sort of categorizing things either by what they are, so data, parameters, and here some of the engine input nodes, so how to get information out of the engine, and maths, etc, etc. So all cleanly laid out, well commented, hopefully nice and easy to follow. And then finally just some workflow examples. So this is almost even like a workbook, here using the Shift WASD keys to align nodes. So little bits of best practice and sort of workflow, how to set up your materials in a nice, easy and clean way, which makes it easy for you to work with and also for your sort of colleagues to work with. So as I say, the first part is more, let's not say things, of a sort of reference. So not necessarily a series of examples that you'd want to go one by one, but just talking about the different parts of the material. So this is the blend modes. So the different blend modes that you can use. So if if we open up the opaque one, here we are, using nice reroutes. So these are all the new reroute nodes, named reroutes that have been introduced recently in the material editor. Nice and clean, big thing to do, lots of clean materials. But yeah, breaking down each part, explaining what it does, a little example of how it might be used, and for example here, texture or single value. And we go through all of the different blend modes, so opaque, masked, translucent, additive, modulate, alpha composite, and alpha holdout. If you're really new to the editor, you might not want to go through every one by one, but they're all there, as I say, as a reference library to come back and check out later on when you need them. And I've included a few functions and materials. We'll get onto those later. But yeah, breaking them down. Oh, that's the material, not the material. Excuse me. Open the material. But breaking them down sort of step by step and increasing in complexity. So if you started at the beginning and went through, that would be a perfectly acceptable way to sort of view all these. Here, obviously using opacity masked, two different options, material, explaining that it's an on-off and the opacity clip value down here. So as I say, trying to be commented in such a way that it's really easy for whoever's looking at these, even though they don't have the video content, they can kind of dig in and explore these functions, these materials. As I say, not going to go through all of them, but they're all included here. So additive, modulate, alpha composite, used a little bit less often, and alpha holdout, which was new to me. This idea that you can knock out the alpha of a material behind the other, which is really interesting. Apparently used a lot in UI, not something I do loads of, but I could see that being useful for sort of bullet impacts on glass, something like that, where you want to create a hole in something translucent. Quite interesting. Okay, let's move on. Let's not get distracted by every material. Shading models. Obviously there are many shading models in Unreal, so unlit all the way up to some of the more complex ones, so skin, subsurface profile, these kinds of things. Hair, I think, is unfortunately currently broken in Unreal 5, so it's not rendering correctly. You're getting a lot of this specular kind of shiny dots, which I believe is just, yeah, a bug with the engine as it currently stands. And unfortunately the eye shader, so the official documentation of the eye shader from Epic says have a look at an example, see the digital human files, for example. So I haven't gone into that one either, but all of the others, so some of the new ones, so single layer water, thin translucency, these are some of the new material blend modes. To open, and again, yeah, commented out nicely with various examples. Moving on, we've got the math operations, so moving away from material types to parts of the material itself. Here we are looking at different data, how we can manipulate data, how we can use that to create different effects within our images, within our shaders. Some debugging. Epic has this wonderful set of functions for debugging values. So for example, here we're looking at power node and what the power math node does, and then we can obviously visualize that with numbers. So here 3 multiplied by 3, we're getting the value 9, and that's the same as 3 to the power of 2. And this is all explained up here, and how we can use that within our textures, or within our materials. The examples here are all a little bit drier. As I say, the second part, there'll be some more worked examples and how they can be sort of applied, but hopefully the two together kind of work quite nicely. So some math and animation using sine waves. I'm not sure how well that's going to come through in the video, but yeah, using some modifiers to these sine waves to create different kind of waveforms and patterns, and so on and so forth. There is lots and lots of math nodes and options available, getting to animation, panners, rotators, all these kinds of things. Really, yeah, kind of like a library of all the functionality that you might want. Really interesting stuff. Moving on to input data. This is anywhere the material editor's getting information from outside of the material editor. So for example, you can get the object position, here just visualized as color. You can get the pixel position, you can get vertex color data, all of these stuff, and every one is broken down with examples and comments. Hopefully nice and easy to follow. Can explain all these things in here. Cool. Moving on, two-sided, time, etc., etc. So I'm not going to go through every single one. If you want to do that yourself, obviously you can download the package yourself. Some reflections, sky atmosphere data, all of this stuff. Last couple in here. So UVs. UVs are so powerful in materials, such an important part of building up complex shaders. And so yeah, I'm going to call them out as their own things. So using UVs as gradients, how to control tiling, how to do animation, all of these things, gradient mapping, so UV distortion, bump offset, parallax occlusion mapping, so whoops, passing in height map, bump offset multiple times, getting quite a nice result here, rendering shadows, nice and expensive, rendering this lots and lots of times, but you get a nice result. Sometimes it's okay in games. Last thing for the first section is functions. So throughout the second part of the course, there's lots of material functions that we make for ease of use, and we'll go over those. And this room, sort of demo room level here, just kind of calls those out. So a couple of ones from the engine. So here, perturb normal. This is creating a normal map from a height map. Taking in this height map here and turning it into a normal, and then here playing back a flipbook, and then a few sort of ease of use material functions. So object position random, using that object position input data that we just sort of looked at in isolation here, converting it into a function, and then creating random values based on that. And you can see here, so that kind of ease of use functionality all built in. Few other things doing the same thing but with material functions. So a lot of this is designed to work with megascans. We'll have a look at some other examples, but this is what I've called a modifier function. So it takes in material attributes and then does something to them and pumps out material attributes, and it allows you to just take those megascan assets, open the material, and rather than remake the whole thing, you just add a little modifier at the end. And there's quite a few of these little modifiers in there. Here just creating randomness in the color, roughness and normal, and we'll see that in some of the examples in a bit. Offset contrast, a little function I quite like to use for height maps that allows you to create more contrast, but rather than doing it by basically by increasing the black values. Works very well for height map textures. Detail normals, all these little quality of life functions, adding materials based on a directionality. I've used moss here in a horizontal direction, so kind of moss growing on the side of rocks or trees, specifically because snow is done in a two-step process. So again, modifier here, add snow to any object you want. I'm kind of breaking down these functions, adding noise to gradients, blending layers, and some landscape auto material helpers, and we'll have a look at those as well. So a little dry in the first half. Obviously really good examples of how everything works, can be really useful and really good references to go back to. And then in the second half here, the O1s, actually looking at applying these techniques. So focusing on environment. So here we've got some master materials. There are many ways to build a master material, and we cover a few of them here. So again, using those reroute nodes, breaking out each of the different parts that you might want to do. And a master material is really just a kind of a base material that you can then instance and update, and it allows you to have that functionality of one shader being applied lots of places, which gives you a lot of flexibility. And you can see here the different parts broken out. While this is great, I think there's a better way to do that, and that is to use functions. And so I have made each of those kind of inputs into their own function. And so you can see here a much neater, cleaner material, very easy to read. Material functions are relatively new in Unreal. I mean, definitely Unreal 4 weren't in 3, but not quite as used as I think used as much as I think they should be. You can almost function everything. Just in terms of readability, this is so much cleaner and easier to use. And then when we want to use our base color, let's say for example we were doing a master material, we can just drop in that base color. And what it allows us is the flexibility later on. Let's say we wanted to make a sequel to our game and suddenly make all of our materials a different color. Well, we can go to our base color function, and that's going to be used everywhere in all of our master materials. So we're not keeping multiple different materials active at the same time. There is a downside to that. If I update this, it will cause a recompile in all of those shaders, but it's about balancing those two things. So yeah, different example of master materials: masked, translucent, and opaque. Looking at decals, or decals, depending on how you want to pronounce them. I'm firmly in decals camp, but lots of people say decal. Yeah, currently the decal system in Unreal is in 5 is a little broken in places, I think. It's definitely a work in progress, but either applying kind of full materials, such as here, applying just color. This one, blend modulate, I think should work. Modulate should take the pixel color and multiply it, which means we should just see the stains and not the white, and I think that's currently broken. So either that will get fixed, or it maybe cannot be used with the way the decals are being done now. Not 100% sure on that one. The documentation seems to imply it should work, but it's not working as I expect. Decal is just affecting roughness. So here we're not affecting any of the color or anything of the floor, just the shininess. Decal is just affecting normal. Yeah, decals that would be nice, but unfortunately don't work as we would like. For explosions, it's very common to want to have normals and sort of darkness, multiplying modulates separate from each other, and it's not currently possible with the decal system, so just calling that one out. Masking our decals, don't know if you've noticed, but all of these ones up here are smearing across the top of the ceiling. This one isn't. We've put a function in to fix that, just comparing the decal angle to the world normal, and some examples of that. We can use POM or parallax occlusion mapping in our decals to create the illusion of depth. A little bit smearing, maybe need some slightly higher samples, but from a distance that works quite nicely. And then lastly, something that was new to me, custom decal response. So this decal on here is this sort of blue splodge. This side, it's just a normal decal response, just applies the blue splodge, but this one has its own custom response, where it's taking in the height map, which is quite a nice sort of feature to be able to have in some instances. So quite a nice one in there. Moving on. Taking world space information. So we have here using the object position. So we saw it sort of from the math side of view in the first part, and here we've got a bit more of a sort of application for it. So these 3 rocks, obviously the exact same model, and we're using the object position to do randomization. So in this case, we're doing quite a lot of randomization, but obviously that's all scalable via parameters, and we're affecting the normals, and we're affecting the roughness, and we're affecting the color. So you can build up quite a lot of clever sort of functionality into your shaders to help kind of break up things in your scene. Similarly, for larger objects, you couldn't randomize bits of wall like this. It doesn't work. You'd see the randomization, it would be big chunks, but we can do projections. If I move this around, there's a projection happening. Maybe it works better if I move it up, especially when I get to the tiling. There we are. So there's a projection mask happening in world space. So we're projecting in the 2 axes. Works really well for things like walls. Very common to see this kind of setup. It's one model 3 times, but we've got a projection now kind of breaking that up. Similarly here, this is the moss shader that we saw as a function earlier. And as I say, these are applied as modifiers. So if I open up the instance, we just have modifiers down here, and all we've done is taken the Megascans material, or whatever material that you've created, and there we are, just add moss, add random. This one here, that's actually Megascans adjustments, but the same principle, plugging in, and you're just sort of daisy chaining these things into each other. Add snow. similar modifier, done in 2 steps, so you get a nice kind of blended snow and then a thicker full snow on top, and it's all world space. So if I take this wall and knock it over, this wall is now fully snow on top. Ignore that we can see inside it, but there we are. Really nice to help build dynamic shaders. They can do a lot to increase our productivity and sort of fidelity of the world that we're working with. Last couple, distance normals. So adding normals when you're close up to an object, creating the illusion of more information in your material or in your texture. If you've got a very low res texture and you get close to it, you don't want to see pixelation. Well, we can maybe fix that or fudge that, I suppose, with a little bit of detail normal. And then finally, distance-based tiling. Here we have this material assigned here. It's the same texture sample near and far, but sampled at different scales. So if I come out really far away, we can see we get the tiling, and as we get really close to it, we get different tiling, and that blend between the two just gives us a nice breakup of distance. Quite easy to do, but quite effective for this. Last 4 or 3.5, I suppose. Vertex painting, building up different complexities in Vertex painting materials. So this plane has different vertex colors on it. Here we're using the red channel to blend between the materials. It's not very well done. We can use some noise to break that up, and that I believe is world space noise. So as we move that around, we're going to get different noises on different objects. So you could use the same plane a few times, and the world space noise will help break up the repetition. We can use a height map. So here we can see the plaster inside of the bricks. We can use the 2 things together. So we have a height map and world space noise working together, which works quite well. We can use that perturb normal function that we saw earlier to add a normal edge detail to this. So now we've got like a good surface or a good illusion of a join between the two. And then we can add more layers. And as I say, all of these materials are commented out and built up one by one. So if you start at the beginning, oops, let's open the actual material, and kind of like go step by step, you'll see each of the sort of complexities being added. Lots of use of functions, all of which again are commented out. Some of them are Unreal built-in functions. Anything that I've made will be nicely commented out. And then finally, adding additional details on top. So here we've got an additional layer of drips that's added after the other blends, so it doesn't care what's underneath, it just adds drips on top. Some of these lessons you may recognize from my YouTube channel already, but as I say, when the video content is ready for this, they will be much more in depth and much more kind of long form and broken down. Give this a sec to open landscapes. Here we are. Yeah, what not to do. This landscape's broken. It's got too many samplers. That's not very good. And then going through the different ways we can fix that. So fixing up the number of samplers first, and then different ways to build a material for landscapes. So here, weight blending, height map blending. Get some nice shadows in this. So using a height map to blend between surfaces. Alpha blending. This is the way I like to build up materials. And if I open this one up, you'll see there is already a series of videos on the channel for landscapes, and a few helpers here. So landscape layers, I've made functions for, and also blending height lerps. That's the inbuilt one, not this material, but there's a blend layers at some point, but neatly laid out, cleanly laid out. Lots of powerful functionality, contrast controls, height adjustment. This is using that contrast height map that I mentioned earlier, grass meshes, and then runtime virtual textures, so doing blending with objects. So we have here a mesh from Megascans, and the skirt around it, the surface mesh, is using the runtime virtual height map, runtime virtual texture, to give you a nice projection on that, and it blends nicely into the ground. So all of those sets of things for landscapes. Additionally, we have a couple of setups for an AutoLandscape. So an AutoLandscape material takes in the geometry and the surface and then builds it up. So here we have our debug one, nice flat bright colors, but you can see above a certain height we get snow, below a certain height we get, well, wouldn't be water, it would be the sort of under the water material, and there'd be a water plane there as well. But you can see we get sort of shoreline, and we get some randomness within this, and all of these materials, if I open up the landscape material, nicely functioned out and explained how to do so different blend types, different blend surfaces, using either texture masks or what I've called an up mask, so that's for things like snow on top, or in this case we've also got a height mask, so below a certain height, above a certain height, plus also facing, plus also texture, and with all those you can build up really quite complex materials, and then you can just swap out the functions and then you'll get materials on them instead. So here we're just using some mega scans as placeholders. Obviously you can adjust these to suit your materials as you need. Very powerful. Last thing, the new layered materials feature in Unreal. Give it a second. This is basically using the instance system to do a lot of what we've been doing manually, but within the instance. So if I open up the instance for this, you're able to plug in different layers and then also different blends to control those layers. So this one's got a bit of everything. If we find the thing here, but all of the different layers are added one by one. So if I just turn them all off, is that going to work? Here we are. So the first layer that gets added is some normals, and it's using just alert blend, and we can control that here. And again, these are all set up as material functions, so it's very easy to build a very dynamic, controllable material. Adding some snow on top using a weld up blend, so that's going to be taking the weld direction again. What else have we got in here? Green using a height lerp. If I make that visible, so now it's using a height map texture that's got these kind of crosses and lines on it, and so on and so forth. I'm not going to go through all of them now. So there's one material here with everything, and then each one is also broken out. So the lerp is just a blend with height map, blend based on texture, weld up, normals only, so detail normals, that kind of thing, and then the last adding color and multiplying color, so doing kind of stains and dirt, or just sort of like color overlays. Cool. So that's a quick overview of everything that's included. So 14 different sub-levels, 129 materials, all nicely commented out, hopefully easy to follow. As I say, there definitely will be some video content coming with this. Well, the original plan was to do the video content and sell it as a packaged thing. If this sells really, really well, maybe I'll just put it on YouTube and have it as a sort of a free thing. We shall see how it goes. But if you do want to support this, hopefully the more people who do, the more I'll be able to sort of do more of these things. Definitely going to be doing a second part. So as I say, VFX materials, water materials, foliage shaders, all of those things, and kind of like building up sort of quite a comprehensive course of all the materials, all the material editor sort of techniques and shaders and everything. So if you have any comments, if you do want to see more of this, please let me know. I have a Patreon. Thank you to my Patreon supporters. I won't be charging for this video. Obviously it's advertising something else I'm charging for, so hopefully that's fine. But yeah, please do follow the link. If you have any questions and you want to reach out, let me know. Or any other questions just about Unreal Engine in general. Hopefully I'll find some time to do some more sort of actual tutorials for the YouTube channel as well. I'm not stopping that to do this. I'm trying to do both sort of simultaneously. So yeah, thanks very much. Thanks to all the really nice comments I get about my tutorials. It does mean a lot. I'm glad that there are people using this and helping to get into the industry and some learning. And yeah, please do let me know how you think about this. Cool. Right. On that note, I will see you all next time.